Good afternoon. The topic of today's video lecture session is a prototype model, which is one of the very important software development lifecycle model. We'll begin with the definition of SDLC, which is software development lifecycle. It is actually a period of time when the software is being developed till the time it is retired. So all the activities which are involved from the conception of the software till the time it is deemed not fit for use will be falling into the category of software development life cycle. Any development life cycle constitutes some phases, namely the requirements phase, the design phase, implementation phase, test phase, installation, and the maintenance phase. Depending upon the model which is being described upon, these life cycle phases may be little more developed into to suit the customer's requirement. Today we will be focusing upon the prototype model. A prototype model begins with the development of a prototype. So what exactly is a prototype? It is a working model of the system. And why do we develop a prototype? We create a prototype so that we can be very sure about what our customer is expecting from us in the form of a product. Every prototype begins with the collection of requirements as is depicted in the first block. Once the requirements are procured, a quick design is formulated. Based on the design, coding is done and a small prototype or a dummy model of the system is developed. That dummy model of the system is then given to the customer so that the customer can evaluate that model. Now, if the prototype satisfies the customer's requirement, it would be accepted. Now, in case if there are any changes involved, then the prototype is further refined into. Now, when the prototype is being refined, again it will go back to the quick design phase, followed by the implementation phase, again an evaluation phase. Once a prototype is accepted upon, a detailed design is done for the product. Detailed design is followed by the implementation, in which we code for the product, and the modules involved would be tested, first individually, then in an integrated fashion. The integration can be a top-down or a bottom-up approach. And finally, all the modules as a form of a system is combined, and the system would be subjected to different levels of testing like stress testing, behavior testing, and so on. Once our system is operational, we would be installing the system at the customer's site, and then the maintenance phase begins. So if we would have observed carefully into the prototyping model, the phases from design to operation and maintenance are similar to the waterfall model, which is a classic life cycle model followed in the software industry. Then what is different in prototype model? That is the very existence of a prototype. A prototype can be developed in any of the two approaches. It could be an evolutionary approach or a throwaway approach. If it is an evolutionary approach, the prototype is developed with the intention that it will be evolved into a final product. So utmost care is taken for each of the life cycle phases. Adequate amount of time is spent in each of the life cycle phases. Whereas, if it is a throwaway approach, the prototype would be discarded, and once again the system is developed from the scratch, starting from the design phase. Now, since the prototype would not be considered for the final product, then not much time would be spent on the design and the implementation of a prototype. The diagram which was depicted in the previous slide is actually an exact representation of the throwaway prototype. In an evolutionary prototype, the design would be having and taking considerable amount of time. Let us move on to the advantages and the disadvantages of prototype model. The advantages of a prototype. The main advantage of the prototype model involves active user involvement. Since the user is the one who has to certify the prototype, his involvement is must. And because the user is involved right from the inception of the product, the chances of having any kind of hiccups because of non-understanding of the requirements or non-availability of the feedback of the customer can be eliminated. Also, we can understand the system better because in each version of the prototype, the requirements are being further refined. The customer's involvement provides a quick feedback about the system, and in case if there is any functionality missing, that also can be counteracted very soon. On the downside, This model is pretty time consuming because if you do not time bound the development of the software and its delivery, it can exceed the stipulated amount of time. And also it is capable of increasing the complexity if you do not follow the timeline framework. For today, we would stop at this. Thank you.